Hello everybody, welcome to this Monday evening session on the Pathlight Thrive Hive. I hope you're well, hope you've had a good day, and hopefully you've been out and got some fresh air and sunshine. And I wonder if you have taken the opportunity to go to the shops now that they're open again. I went to my local town centre earlier on today, and I was quite saddened actually by the number of people that were out queuing outside Sports Direct and Primark and Poundland, and not many of them were keeping 2 meters apart, but there we go. I went to Holland Barrett, got some goodies and came home again. Made me a little bit anxious though. Anyway, we have got a very special guest returning to the Hive this evening. It's Christine Lafferty, and she's going to be talking about Ayurveda and how that can impact your mental health and your holistic well-being, in fact. So hopefully you will have seen part one. If not, don't worry, you can still pick up lots of interesting stuff tonight, I'm sure. And also there were a couple of questionnaires, which are totally optional, but if you've done those or if you fancy doing them quickly now, they only take about 5 minutes each, to find out what your emotional body type is and your emotional type and your body type. Quite interesting, and maybe if you want to do that really quick, take you about 10 minutes maybe, and those might be useful later on. So just before we bring Christine in, as usual, I'm going to, hello Paul, and Christine says, Kath. Hello Kath, you found your way on, excellent. I'm going to do a bit of promo stuff, so if you would kindly share the group link with your Facebook friends and anyone else in your wider networks, that would be great. The more the merrier. And if there's anyone in particular that you know that you think would benefit from what goes on here, just invite them in. Just click on the invite button on Facebook and type the name in, and in they will pop if they want to. So that'd be good. Grow the community. And if you are enjoying it and you haven't already subscribed or bought me some virtual coffees, you can do so whenever you wish. Totally optional. It's all, on a needs basis. And what am I trying to say? If you can afford it and you fancy giving me some money, then you can go to buymeacoffee.com/thrivehive, and you can either just buy some virtual coffees each time you come to a session that you find useful, or you can subscribe and become a member and get lots of wonderful benefits that do not include a Blue Peter badge. And what else? Oh yeah, I'm offering some free 15-minute coaching, personal development support calls at the moment. So there's a few people kind of asking me if I can be their therapist and stuff. And I can't just yet, I'm afraid. I'm not allowed to take on private clients until next year. They've got to be within a placement, supported by supervision and stuff. But I do offer coaching, personal development, well-being support, and I can't call it psychotherapy or counselling, but I can call it coaching. So if you feel I can assist you in any way, then feel free to message me. We can set up a free 15-minute introductory call and go from there if you fancy. And if you have any comments or questions for Christine as we go through tonight's session, then just pop them in the comments box. And as usual, if you want us to know what your name is, you need to go to that link there. Otherwise, it'll just say Facebook user. But that's okay if you just want to be known as Facebook user. That's cool. So, hopefully we're going to learn all about Ayurveda. And that's all I've got to say. Let's bring Christine in. Hello, Christine, and welcome back.
Oh, hi. And thank you. Thanks very much for having me back. And I just want to say I think this is a really fabulous thing that you're doing, Paul. I really do. And I've managed to listen into one or two of the things that you do, and I just do think you're doing a great job. And I think people out there who do want therapy will be very fortunate when you are able to see clients independently.
Thank you. It's very kind of you. Next year, hopefully. But yeah, thank you very much, Christine. And you're very welcome to come back. We've got lots of great feedback on your first session and lots of engagement. And I know a lot of people are looking forward to part two.
Wow.
So
we'll see what we can do.
absolutely.
As I say, thank you very much for having me back. The other thing I just want to say before we start tonight as well is, I don't know who's joining this tonight or anything, but if any of my friends out there are the ones that are reopening their businesses again at the moment, I want to say that I'm really thinking of you and I wish you well, because I think it's possibly, I don't know, possibly more stressful to start up again now than it was just to close down. So lots of love and thoughts.
Thank you. Yes, I echo those sentiments. So I know we've got Kath with us at the moment. We've got Chris as well. And someone saying, hi, Paul and Christine, looking forward to this evening's event. But that was from Facebook user. Don't know who that was, but hey, anyway.
Welcome.
Maybe that was Chris. Maybe that was Chris.
Welcome.
Yes, indeed. So for those who didn't catch the first session, Christina, and didn't get your introduction, would you like to introduce yourself? Just say a little bit about yourself first.
Yeah, as you know, my name's Christine Lafferty. I live up here in Delft, looking out across the beautiful moorland. I do have a son, a daughter-in-law and 2 granddaughters, but they live way down south, as I say. I always tell my son he's a traitor, he's become a citizen. And I've got too many years to say now of background in health and healthcare and the health services and teaching health, and long time. And for quite a number of years now, I think I first started counselling when did I do? I got my first counselling diploma in 90, might have been, I think it was 93, not 92, 93. So a long time in the counselling field, and then later psychotherapy and so on. And that's mainly the work that I do now, is psychotherapeutic work. But I have this big interest in Ayurveda. And I've been studying to myself a bit more recently about the mental health side of Ayurveda and Vedic counselling, kind of interesting. And people who know me will know that I keep saying, just might go and do that Ayurvedic practitioner training. But I haven't taught myself into it quite yet. The training I've done so far in Ayurveda, it's been quite challenging. There's quite a lot of Sanskrit to learn, and it's the most beautiful language. I think it's utterly lovely. But for me anyway, it didn't have any relation to the language I already speak. So it's really hard to learn. And many a word in Sanskrit has got 2 sentences worth of meaning if we try to put it into English. So we can't always get the exact meaning from it. So it's a bit daunting to go forward and do the actual practitioner training, because there's even more Sanskrit. I'm not at all worried about learning all the herbs and how to assessment and diagnosis and stuff, but learning all the Sanskrit is pretty daunting to me.
Well, if anyone can do it, you can.
Well, I don't know. My brain isn't getting any younger, just like my body now. But we'll see. You never know. I'm quite often up for a challenge.
You are. You inspire me as one of those lifelong learners, Christine. You're always thinking,
I am a lifelong learner. I'm the perpetual student. It's true. Yeah.
Wonderful. Great. So Jack Corner's here. Hello, Jack. And several other people as well. Anyway, Christine, over to you. Last time we talked about routines quite a lot, didn't we, around how building up a healthy routine is really good. And today you're going to talk about emotional types, body types, and some other stuff as well, maybe?
yeah, we'll see how much time we've got and see where we get to. I know several times, not on here, but different times, people have said, and what is it about food? What is it about food? So people want to know something about food. But yes, last time, I think I gave a little introduction to Ayurveda and what the word means, which is kind of science of life, or sometimes it's called the truth of life, and how it's a consciousness-based system. And for me, I always think of it as the original holistic medicine, the original holistic healing system, because it takes into account body, mind, spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said last time, it's got spirituality at its heart, really. That's where it is. And we did have routine as a centre, because that's the way that the principles and practice of yoga can be moulded into the day. You know, if you've got a good routine, you can get these practices in, obviously on a regular basis. And I think I was saying last time that some types are naturally really good at routine and feel kind of bothered when their routine is disturbed, and other types don't much get the hang of routine at all. But I absolutely know that when I have routine, I'm all the better for it. Yeah. So we're going to say a bit more about those kind of things. So we talked about routine, and within that talked about meditation and yoga, which are two very important aspects of the practices of Ayurveda. And of course, both can be really helpful in keeping us balanced and keeping the mind as well as the body stable. You know, sort of that quietening of the mind. There are times when people are particularly mentally suffering mentally, that I don't, certainly in the early days, advise or take them into meditations, because for some people they could be disappearing further into themselves at a time when they need to be a little bit more outward. So it's not a blanket thing for me anyway, and the way I work and the way as I work as a psychotherapist, it's not a blanket thing. It's not something to say, oh, that's absolutely wonderful for everybody at any moment in their life. Maybe not at some moments in our lives.
Yeah.
But as other people have talked on your on Pathlight, I know, Paul, that there are many, many benefits of meditation. And research has shown us now that it does shrink that little bit of the brain called the amygdala, which is our kind of stress centre. So in many, many ways, for many, many people, much of the time, a really good way to go.
Yeah.
So we said some stuff about that, and we touched just a little bit on the 5 elements, which are air, ether, water, fire, and earth. Those are the 5 key elements that we find at the centre of Ayurveda, and they're the basis for the science of it, really. And so today, I know people want me to talk about food, but before I say something about that, I'd like to say a little bit more about doshas. And for those who didn't hear last time, your dosha is like your constitution, your overall nature, yeah? And I'd also like to say something about another aspect of Ayurveda, which is the Gunas. And if you keep seeing me looking away like this, I'm just looking at my notes to make sure I include everything, because when I talk about doshas and body types, one body type is Vata, and I am by a long score Vata. And what's said about Vatas and the mind is that we're very quick to understand things, and we pick things up really quickly, and we forget them just as quickly.
So when you're learning your Sanskrit, you get it straight away, and then, oh, it's gone again.
Yeah, then it's gone. So that, combined with my dear age now, that leads me to have a few notes for things like this. So when I look away, that's what I'm doing. I'm just looking at my notes. So the reason I want to talk some about doshas and gunas is because they have significance in terms of the foods we eat and the other practices in an Ayurvedic lifestyle. And I know that Paul sent out a website that you could go to and do those questionnaires that he's mentioned, where you could get a general idea of your body type. And I think the one that you gave out was the Life Spa. So on that one, Dr. John is my Ayurvedic practitioner. So that's how I'm really familiar with what's on that website and what he's got and so on. And what those questionnaires enable him to see is particularly where you are now. So it's a good guide, but it may not be the whole story. And the good thing about them is, and that's in no way critical of what he's doing, because he's treating people, he needs to know how they are now. The good thing about the way he does the questionnaires is that you get to look at your mental type, your behavioural type, emotional type, physical type. I think he does fitness, doesn't he? So because when we have our overall dosha, let me just wind back slightly and say, well, just go back a bit before I say that next thing. Let's have a look at how the doshas are made up. So we've got these 5 elements: air, ether, fire, water, and earth. And we all have all of those elements within us. We're made from those elements, yeah. But we'll have more of some than others. So we can have air and ether as our leading elements, our main elements. And if we do, that we're then said to have a Vata dosha. If we have fire and water, which is an interesting combination, isn't it? But fire and water make a Pitta constitution, okay, a Pitta dosha. And water and earth make a Kapha dosha, okay? So you can have your main dosha, which is just one of those, or there are 3 combined ones, which would be Vata Pitta. So that means that your Pitta score comes really close to your Vata 1, or a Vata Kapha, which means that your Kapha score comes really close to your Vata 1, or you can have a Pitta Kapha, which is your mainly Pitta, but that Kapha score comes really close. And there are questionnaires that ask you to really think back on your earlier life and how you've mostly been. So if you were always like a pretty thin, scrawny child, but now you've put weight on and you're more kind of medium weight, on the questionnaires that show your natural constitution, you'll be marking the one that says thin and bony, yeah, even though you're not now, yeah. So some questionnaires will do that, and they'll give you your overall type, but then it's useful to break down, because sometimes there are some things that will balance out a little. I think I'm really fortunate. I have a main Vata constitution, as I say, by far. I'm not saying that's fortunate, but Vatas usually have irregular and light sleep. I have Kapha sleep, which is deep and long. And throughout my life, I've been eternally grateful for that bit of me that's more Kapha. My hair's more Kapha too. Yeah. So sometimes things are balanced out when we look at the doshas. So there are those types. Some not so often, but some people score equal in all three and are what we call tridoshic. Yeah. So that's I'm going to come back a little bit more to those when we talk about foods. But just to give you an idea, not everybody will have done the questionnaire, I know, and that's fine. But Vata constitutional people are usually long-bodied, quite bony, prominent joints. If you can see my wrist joints there, you know, prominent with the veins over. That's like typical Vata. We're usually got quite small eyes, either small or large teeth, and quite often irregular. And mine are, they're small and a bit irregular. And dry. One of the main things about Vata is the dryness. There's also a season for each constitution. So, and the season of Vata is winter, which is cold and often dry. And that's the season for people who are a Vata constitution to particularly watch out for, to be careful of, because they'd be even more prone to drying out in the winter than the other parts of the year. Yeah. So, for instance, Vatas often have a tendency to constipation because the stool's dried out, you know. Dry hair, that kind of thing, dry skin. And particularly in winter. And with their nervous systems, they tend to be anxious, worrying sort of people. And see, the air and the ether, they're very, what Vata is responsible for in the body is movement. And as you know, air, wind, and so on, it moves very quickly. So their mood is changeable and it can change quickly. Yeah, it can change quickly. And if you know that you're a Vata, and one mid-morning you suddenly feel, oh, felt all right an hour ago, but I don't now. No. And that's how a Vata constitution can change like that quite quickly, and it can be quite disconcerting. You know, sort of, well, what's wrong? What? You know, but just if you know it's part of your nature, that can help a little. Can help to know, well, this is me, this is the way I am, and you know, just let this be for now. Let this be, because the odds are I'll change again in another hour or another 2 hours, or at least tomorrow. You know. So, but what can happen with a Vata constitution is they can really spin out nervously. The Vata does govern the nervous system, and they can really spin out. So if you're Vata imbalanced, this can be part of how you're feeling, you know, dried out and spun out.
And if I can just pause for a sec, Christine, Chris's message to say, as much as I loathe routine, I've come to realise that whilst we've been in lockdown, I've noticed that I've struggled with direction in my life. I'm a Vata.
Yeah. Yes.
Does that make sense?
Change with the wind, Chris. Change with the wind. And yeah, so struggled, with that and finding a routine. I know in one of my grandchildren, the older one, what she struggles to do in the school holiday is when she's got no given routine, she struggles to find structure. And I can really see it in her, and she needs to be given it. Yet she's doing, and interestingly, during the lockdown, when she's had to be at a computer at a certain time and she's had to set a bell for herself and things, she's getting a little bit more practice in doing that. But so that's the Vata. The Pitta is fire and water, and immediately it's a fiery kind of nature, and their thing is heat, and they will overheat. And so of course the season for them to watch out for is summer, where they'll overheat, get rashes, get itchy skin, get irritable. That's the thing with Pitta, can get irritable. And if they go too far, if you get a Pitta imbalance, and by the way, it's not only the dosha that you are that can go out of balance. I'm Vata constitution, Vata dosha, but I sometimes get a Kapha imbalance. I don't know that I've ever had a Pitta imbalance, but it wouldn't be impossible, perfectly possible. But the one that's most likely to go out of balance first is your main one. And when Vata goes out of balance, because it's what they call the king of the doshas, and that's not to give it any superiority, it's just that it governs movement, so it kind of shifts everything and it'll knock everything out of balance. So if you get a Vata imbalance, you can knock the other doshas out of balance as well. So with Pitta, if they get an accumulation, or if anyone gets a Pitta accumulation, you can have all sorts of inflammatory conditions. Anything that's heartburn, indigestion, swollen joints, inflamed joints, anything that's heat, diarrhea. Because what the body's trying to do is get rid of that heat, and it's finding all the ways that it can, the hot skin, the rashes, the irritable nature, the diarrhea. It's all trying to get rid of the heat. So they need to be careful in summer. Mentally, Pitta's tendency is under stress, they'll get angry. Whereas a Vata will get more worried and anxious, the Pitta gets angry, irritated.
No, I don't.
No.
I'm a Pitta, according to the questionnaire I did yesterday anyway. And I do overheat in the summer, so I have to drink lots of water or eat lots of ice cream.
Oh, well, that's a good remedy, isn't it? They would tend to get angry. And of course, if you carry a message, usually from your early life somewhere, that you're not supposed to get angry, that's not really approved of, it's not been okay in your household, and then you hold it, then that heat, that anger feeling, it has to be somewhere. And it has to manifest somehow. So that can be tricky.
Yes, I can attest to that.
Yeah. And if a Pitta feels under threat, their tendency is to fight. Yeah. Their tendency is to fight if they feel under stress. The tendency of a Kapha, for instance, if they feel under threat, their tendency is to make peace. That would be their attempt, would be to try and make peace. For the Kapha constitutions, when they are under stress, there's more of a tendency to feel somewhat indifferent and to withdraw. And I have that kapha tendency to withdraw under stress.
So this sounds like the fight, flight, freeze response.
Indeed,
So
indeed.
Pitta is fight, Vata is
Flight.
freeze, is it? And Kapha is...
Vata is flight. It is
Right.
run like the wind. It's like get away from. Yeah, it's to run. And kapha is to withdraw. Like
Right.
that's like freezing. Yeah, that's right, Paul. Yeah. And you'll see, especially now, as in these last few years, lots of overlap with modern science and Ayurveda. And I'm really glad for that. Although a bit of me kind of smiles wryly, and oh, right, modern science is caught up. But it's good because a lot of people need that modern science. They need something that's familiar to them, maybe, and they need that. So we've got more and more of that coming through now. The validation by modern science. So yeah. So if you're kapha, your main elements are water and earth. So we know what happens if you mix water and earth together.
You get mud.
You get mud. So with a kapha imbalance or a kapha accumulation, and with the kapha constitutional people, the risk is that because generally they're slow, steady, reliable, peacemakers, very sweet-natured, good, oily, clear skin, big eyes, dark wavy hair, all those such lovely qualities. Out of balance, they get really slow, lethargic, stuck, Qatari, all bunged up in the sinuses, congested. Yeah, they're congested. Kapha is responsible for the structure and the framework of the body. And people who are mainly kapha, who have a kapha dosha, they're usually quite sturdy looking people, solid. Yeah. But the risk is, and their season to watch out for is spring, which tends to be cool and wet. And so they have to watch out not to get what I call soggy, especially at that period of the year. And it's a good time for all of us. My Ayurvedic practitioner has written a lot about eating with the seasons and eating seasonally, and always says that nature gives us the answers. So in springtime, nature doesn't give us the heavier foods. The wheat harvest has been done at what we call autumn, the beginning of the winter coming on. It's all been harvested and milled, and we've had the bread to see us through the winter when there's not so much fresh food and when we need that kind of heavier and warmer food. But in springtime, nature starts to give us leafy things. Yeah. So in springtime, it is a season where we should have less fatty, oily stuff and more green leafy and lighter food. And that's the thing, that's what will counteract a kapha imbalance. Often, no matter what time of year, there's a kapha imbalance, and you reduce all the oils and the fats down and give a lighter diet. And when I come to the tastes in a minute, well, why don't I do that now? It's probably not the order of my notes, but what the heck? Let's come back to that. I don't miss it. That's it. I can go there. So in Ayurveda, there are 6 tastes, okay? And the general recommendation is that we get all 6 tastes into every meal. And in that way, the body, mind will be satiated. We're not talking about full here, or what we might call satisfied, but satiated. Do you know that those times when you've had a meal and it's been good enough quantity and all of that, and you're going, just need something else. Yeah, just need something else. And you go to the fridge, or you go to the cupboard, or you leave it 20 minutes because you're really trying, but there's still, there's still the call to go to the cupboard or whatever.
I did it myself this evening, Christine. I had my tea, had enough,
yeah.
but I needed a bowl of cornflakes, so that's what I did.
There you go. So something, Ayurveda would say, some taste was missing. Yeah. So the 6 tastes we have are sweet, sour, salty, pungent, bitter, and astringent. Yeah. And mostly speaking, if we do that thing that they call eat the rainbow, then you're most likely to get all those tastes in. So, and there's endless examples of foods that fit into these categories. And Dr. John on his website, the Life Spa website, he probably has something for this, but if the people who are listening to this, Paula, or who listen to it later, want a basic list of which foods come under sweet and sour and salty, I could let you have them if you can somehow get that to people. And yes. I'm not sure the technology for that. I'm not very good at technology, but we could work that out somehow. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
And sweet, of course, doesn't mean, oh, that's great, I'm a Vata, sweet things pacify me, I can eat 2 pounds of sugar a day, that's fine. Of course, it's a shame really, but it doesn't mean that. So the tastes that will pacify Vata are sweet, sour, and salty. Yeah. So if we've got an accumulation of Vata, or we are Vata and we know we've tipped a bit, those tastes will pacify us.
So you need to have a jar of lime pickle.
Sour, yes. Yeah, jar of lime. Oh God, that's really sour.
Sweet, sour, and salty, isn't it? Lime pickle. That's what'll pacify it. I'm sure a jar of lime pickle will do it nice people. Now, what will aggravate the Vata are the other 3 tastes, the pungent, the astringent, and the bitter. If you think about it, especially a lot of the bitter foods are the green, leafy things. And of course, naturally, a Vata will go towards those, up there in the air, pick the leaves off the trees, a bit of a giraffe, really, picking that kind of food. But if we've got a Vata imbalance, a Vata accumulation, it'll aggravate it. Those other 3 tastes will aggravate it. Whereas for the pitta, or a pitta imbalance or a pitta accumulation, what will aggravate them is pungent. Let me check I'm giving you the right things. Yeah, sour and salty. Yeah, so those will aggravate the pitta, pungent, sour, and salty. I had a friend of mine who's a pitta dosha come visit me. This is a few years ago now. And she was staying for a few days. And she'd been, about the 2nd day, I said to her, you're ever so ratty. She snapped at me and, and this, she wouldn't normally be like this. And she said, am I? And I said, you are, love, yeah. You're really snapping at me. And she said, what do you think? And she's a big lover of spice, and she'll use lots of spices. And I said, you'll have to cut your spice down for a while. Which is hard for her. No, it was hard. But she did. And she settled and everything. Next time I went to visit her and she said,
I've been doing what you said. Do you think I'm better? So of course, the ones that will pacify the pitta are the other ones, which are the sweet and I have to make sure I get these right. Yes, the sweet and the bitter and the astringent. So those ones, if you've got, you feel yourself getting all irritated, annoyed, a bit kind of mad at life, then those ones, the sweet, the bitter and the astringent, they'll pacify.
So some dark chocolate on banana loaf. That sounds good to me.
Yeah. Dark chocolate's lovely and bitter, isn't it? Yeah. You could even get 100% now. Which is
I've had some. It was a kind of
very different.
Yeah, bit of a challenge for me. 85 is my limit, I think.
Right. That's good enough, definitely, Paul. Definitely. So then we've got Kapha, who, remember, their elements, their main elements are earth and water. And what pacifies them are the pungent, the astringent, and the bitter. Those three. So if we've got that Kapha accumulation, which I sometimes do get, then to eat the pungent, bitter, and astringent will do that. What I have to be careful of is the balance of it, because remember, I'm a Vata, and those are the things that all take the Vata up, but it would probably bring it all back into balance, you see. So eating those three will pacify the Kapha. And of course, what will aggravate the Kapha are the sweet, the sour, and salty. So when you get an idea of what those foods are, and most of us have for most of them, the ones that people struggle a bit around is what's astringent. And it's the foods that are astringent means drying. This is why Vatas have to be aware of them, really. So peas are, some of the beans are, pomegranates, cranberries, and there's a whole list of things. But they, for instance, would be really good if you'd got a Kapha accumulation, because they'll dry it out. We're walking on earth with too much mud, so it's to pull a bit of the water out. So when you think about it, this is the science of it. It all makes sense to do that.
Yeah.
So
great. So yeah, if you could send through that sheet, then I can put it on the Hive.
I've got quite a nice sheet that was part of my Chopra training. That sets that out quite nicely. Cool. Gives you enough of a list anyway to know. So have we got time then to talk a little bit about the Gunas?
Yeah, let's do Gunas.
Okay. It's a funny word, isn't it? But Gunas means to bind, is what it means from the Sanskrit. That's the nearest we get. And when the Gunas are out of balance, they can inhibit our spiritual growth and our contentment and our joy. So, a lot of the people that I see for therapy, they've lost the joy of life, or they've lost that facility to be content. They're more bothered and bothered by it, and it's not right, And in Ayurvedic terms, we'd look at that like the Gunas are out of balance. And they're the principles of nature that govern the mind and the emotions. So achieving balance there. No one, it's like the doshas, no one is more important than the other. And we'll experience all three. There are three gunas, three principles of nature. And we'll experience them all. No one is superior, inferior to another, just like the doshas. But there is a way of being that in Ayurveda they'd say that's what we're striving for. Yeah. So these three are sattva, rajas, and lost how to say it, tamas. So sattva, rajas, and tamas. Okay. Now, sattva means at peace. Yeah. So this way of being, this principle of nature, it's inherent in the nature to be intelligent, virtuous, joyous, loving, you know. And Dr. John, my practitioner, always likens this to when you're a child. When you're a little child, that's the way you are. Nothing's in the way of that. You're very sattvic when you're a child, you know, and and this is why we fall in love with children. They're just so open and peaceful and content. Contentment if the environment's right for them. Of course, they will cry if they need food or if they're wet or if they're cold. But they've got this nature that's inherently peaceful and joyful and loving. And then children start nursery or school, preschool, something like that. And they experience that it's maybe not quite so safe to be that way. Some children might even experience that in the home. Yeah. So they learn like to shield, really, to shield, because they don't feel so safe. And the mind's way of shielding against some of the hurt that they can feel and the unsafeness that they can feel is to get involved in rajasic activity. So more stimulation, because rajas means stimulus, stimulated. And mostly in the world today as humans, we live from that rajasic place in the main. And for many, a lot of stimulation. And you know, I watch the TV like anybody else does, and you know, and get involved. And so again, I suppose it's creating the balance again. Yeah. And like we have to have a little bit of rajas in this world that we're living in now, the way that we've created it, because we've got to get ourselves to work and, you know, we've got to take care of things. So there has to be some stimulus. Tamasic, the tamas, is a place of dullness and lethargy. And of course, what can happen from the overstimulation is that the energy just drains. Yeah. And I don't think we've always realized this, but we need energy to be calm. We need energy to sleep. People who are exhausted, absolutely exhausted, don't generally sleep well because they haven't got enough energy to sleep. So we can completely burn out with too much of a rajasic life. Yeah. And when we do burn out, or just say another thing about rajas as well, that the safety that you then get from the involvement in all of that is really reliant on external things. So kind of move away from that inner self and that being able to be, content and joyful within myself without a lot of stimulus from outside. And of course, whatever's external, whatever we've grown to rely on externally can be taken away from us. And there's been no bigger lesson for that than this latest virus and the lockdown. So much of what we'd grown to rely on as our life, it was taken away overnight. And so that's been and still is for people really difficult. It's like, what do I do? What am I supposed to do now? So, and then, as I say, the risk is burnout from a constantly rajasic lifestyle. And then we go into tamas, which is dull and lethargic and a bit lifeless. And some older people can go there with that kind of mental sort of, well, I'm too old. I'm too old for all that now, whatever all that is, too old for it. We can get into a tamasic way, that way. So we've had a mind that can't be still from a lot of rajas. We've got a mind that can't be still that then enters the tamas. It's fatalistic when we're in this place, fatalistic, judgmental, jealous, it's dark, depressed. And in that retreat, because it is like a major retreat, we blame others and the world for our problems, and it's hard to look into ourselves and say, well, what's it got to do with me? What can I do, and what's it to do with me? Because it's a place of blaming out there, and it's a very, very difficult place to be. A lot of suffering.
As you say, a lot of your clients, I imagine, come to you in that state of tamas. And, maybe what I assume you do is facilitate a space to try and get them back towards sattva.
Yeah. And that's what we're all trying to do, is get more towards sattva. Yeah. And we'll have moments in our lives of tamas. I mean, I think in a way my kapha accumulation can verge on that, when I get lethargic and slow and all of it. Oh God, do I really have to get up today? But I don't have the darkness of the tamas and the deeper depression which can occur. And we can just tip a little bit into tamas, for those people who've done the emotional type. And you'll see there was long lists, and you might have had 2-3 points that were tamas, and several rajas and a few sattva, and that's, it's normal. So we're not, I'm not in any way, I want people to hear this clearly, say that, oh, if you're in tamas, you're in the danger zone, you don't want to, because we go there, it's normal, and we can come out of there again,
Yeah.
And I know you're teaching a lot about this, Paul, in what you're doing on Pathlight. You're helping people to see that we we can come out of these places. There was a book written by a psychologist. I'm looking up at my shelves because I know it's up there somewhere. That she wrote a long time ago. It was a woman called Dorothy Rowe, and you know Dorothy Rowe. She wrote several books, and in one of them, she talks about the way out of your prison, and what she says is, well, you found your way in, so there must be a way out. Must be.
And the key is inside.
You've got the key all the time. You've got the key all the time, but you've lost where you put it. Lost where you put it. I read a great book. I actually picked it off the shelf about in the bookshop about 18 months after my second husband died, and it's one of Thomas More's books. I don't know if you know him, or he's a psychotherapist, but he was a monk for many years. Okay. And one of the books he's written is Dark Nights of the Soul.
Oh yeah.
Not the St. John of the Cross Dark Nights of the Soul, but Thomas More's book, Dark Nights of the Soul. And it was just the right book at the right time for me. But the way he's written that book is he uses myth, and he uses the myth of Demeter and Persephone. And people probably know or might know, but Persephone gets taken into the underworld. She's out picking flowers with the nymphs in the fields one day, and the earth opens up, and then Hades pops up and grabs her and takes to the underworld. And so Thomas More uses that story as the basis for the book, and a big message in it is that of what we can learn in the dark, what we can learn. And something I'll never forget that he said in that book was, in the dark is the best place of all to see a speck of light.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you shine a light in a light room. Well, you kind of see it. You shine a light in a dark room, you really see it. And the other thing he said was, this is my way of saying it, not his, but that, you know, it's fine doing what Persephone did. She ended up, didn't she, with this deal was done between the gods that she would spend, the story varies, some say a third and 2/3, and some say half and half, but some of her time in the underworld there with Hades, and some of her time above ground with her mother Demeter and her friends. And Thomas More was kind of saying, yeah, it's fine, we can do that, but don't lose the key. There are things to be learned in the dark, but you do need the key to come back up, you know, into the upper world some of the time. So anyway, we wandered off a bit there, but maybe not. Maybe it all links together. So how does, let me just see, I'll have a look at my notes here and see if I've finished that bit. Yeah, so in Tamas, the mind becomes more rigid in its beliefs, creates isolation and dissociation from others. Yeah. And again, after that, the husband I was talking about when I got the book, and he died, and I've told you my tendency is to withdraw, and I was aware enough of that tendency to withdraw and to isolate, that when people were inviting me to things, you know, they started to invite me to things to get me out some and so on. And I wrote an email to everybody and I said, if you invite me out and I say no, please ask me again. So there was just a little example of how it can be helpful to know what our tendencies are, you know. And I knew that I could easily stay behind my doors, in my bed even, for longer than would be good for them.
Mm. Yeah, that's a really good example. And the ask twice meme that I've spoken about before around mental health. It's a similar thing, isn't it? Loneliness, withdrawal, grieving, depression.
Yeah. And again, it's not to it's not to ditch isolation, or more importantly, solace, because we need all that balance in our lives. Some people need more time alone than others. Others, I can think of my son, he thrives on company and friends. And fortunately, his wife's the same, and the house is never empty. Well, I couldn't, that would be awful for me. I love seeing friends and I love being with, but I really need some time alone. So knowing yourself and knowing what you need. So let's say a little bit about food then. Let's see. Oh yeah, I've made myself a little note here just to summarise the Vata Pitta Kapha kind of type. And I got this from Dr. John. And he said, if we went back to the caves, when we were living in the caves, the people with Vata dosha would be drawing artwork on the walls of the cave. And the people with the Pitta dosha would be digging it out to see how they could extend it and make it more, And the people with the Kapha dosha would be saying, I don't know what you're bothering for. It's all fine as it is. And I just think that's just a lovely, few sentences that kind of sum up. But of course, it's really broad, isn't it? But okay. Where do I want to go now? Yeah, I've done that bit. See, I've done it all in a different order, so not to worry. Here we go. So we want to be moving ourselves so that we've got a preponderance of sattva, that peacefulness, that contentedness, that joy of life, that joy in life. So where food comes in here is that to be more sattvic, we've got to eat those kind of foods. And that tends to mean fresh food. And of course, at one time, that's how we lived. That was many, many years ago now, but that's how humans lived. What was available was what they ate. What they could get that day was what they ate. And I know there's lots of talk about how, the early humans and how they have this diet of lots of meat and they didn't have carbohydrates. Well, they did. They dug roots out the ground, and they had lots of berries from any trees and bushes that were around, and they had seeds and nuts, which have got a little bit of carb in, more fats and protein, and actually the meat they ate was when somebody had brought home a kill, an animal, and they ate that till it was gone, and then they might not have meat again for months. It's not that easy to get a mammoth, is it? At least I don't think it was. I don't have memory of a life at that time, but I'm not thinking it's very easy to go and get yourself a woolly mammoth. So we want fresh foods, juicy, light, nourishing, with a sweetness to them. Those are the sattvic foods, made fresh. Yeah. we've moved away from the life we've developed has moved us away from being able. I mean, I know there's probably people listening think, well, I can't make fresh food all the time, but we can do as much as we can. And fresh food might be some, I don't know, it can be something, it can be a salad at this time of year, you know, that you have not got a lot of preparation time in. That can be fresh. Just a word, although I know there's a lot of nourishment in raw foods, and I'm not denying their goodness at all, particularly Vata people will find it more difficult to get the goodness out of raw food. They haven't got fantastic digestion system. Ayurveda believes at the centre of health. I could say a lot about that, but we won't have time tonight. So raw food's generally not good for them. And when we're under stress, it tends to affect the digestive system and digestion. So when we're under stress, warm, lightly cooked foods are best. Yeah. So what are the rajasic foods? They're the bitter, the sour, the salty, the pungent, the hot and the dry. Yeah, all the stimulating kind of foods, you know. And there's a place for them. I've said already, Ayurveda says incorporate all 6 tastes. But, you know, like the pungent stuff, the hot and spicy, you don't have to have loads of it. You'll need a little bit, don't you, in? And you don't necessarily need to have it every day. So those are the rajasic foods. Tamasic foods are old, stale. Ayurveda does not advise to eat leftover food. Now, I think that can be difficult. I live on my own. Just the other day, I cut up a sweet potato into those wedges to roast it, you know, with a bit of coconut oil. And it was a large sweet potato. Now, if I left half of it raw, it was going to go weird. And if I cooked it all, I wasn't going to eat it all in the one meal. So I know it's difficult about leftovers, but if you can reduce them as much as possible and eat as much fresh as possible. Leftovers, stale things, not good. They do say in Ayurveda that things like bread and biscuits, get this, more than 8 hours old are tamasic. 8 hours.
Maybe that's why the French have a fresh baguette every day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's also, I don't know that they got it from Ayurveda, but their main meal is lunchtime. Dr. John has a history of a patient he had, a man who he'd seen him a couple of times, and his big struggle was weight, and couldn't get his. He said he couldn't get his weight down, and Dr. John started to see him, but then he moved to France, and this man got in touch with him, and he was having this big meal at lunchtime, but much lighter later in the day because he had this big meal. Lost pounds and pounds of weight by changing the time of eating. So anyway, back to tamasic, yes. And those kind of foods will increase pessimism, slow you down, make you feel lethargic. So that's the link with food and the Gunas. Okay.
Lovely. Thank you for that. So lots of fresh, light food to become more sattvic.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean as I say, you need the variety. You need the variety to get all the nutrients. You need the variety to get all those colours and to get all those tastes. But fresh is always best.
Fresh, white, eat the rainbow.
Yeah. And if it is, especially in the winter time, that's a time for heavy foods. You know, at one time, the wheat used to be gathered at the harvest, and we ate wheat in the winter. That was the season for it. We didn't eat wheat the rest of the year. That's how it used to be, however many hundreds of years ago. We didn't eat wheat. Now, people probably eat it 3 times a day. And I'm not saying wheat is bad for you. Dr. John's written a book called Eat Wheat. And he puts the argument forward for not eating wheat and the arguments forward for eating wheat. It's very interesting. So I'm not, you know, it's not like, oh, yes, we've all got to go wheat free. No. But it's, do you know, there's a phrase, I learned this doing eating psychology, and there's a phrase that's the dose is the poison. So very well, none of the foods that we eat are poisonous. You know, we don't eat the poisonous ones, but the dose is the poison. I was going to show people, but I think we're out of time tonight, Paul. I don't know what time it is.
It's 9:15, Christine.
Okay, 5 minutes to tell people about a self-massage called Abhyanga, right? And it's very good for us in many ways. It's there's a lot of emphasis in Ayurveda on the lymphatic system. You don't hear so much about it in allopathic medicine, really. But in Ayurveda, along with digestion, it's really, really important, because the lymph system is the drains of the body. So if your drains are clogged, everything gets a bit backed up. And if your drains were clogged in your sink in the kitchen, it might smell a bit nicer if you sprinkle something in the sink. And if you poke about just in the plug hole, you might free a little bit up. But what you really need to do, of course, is unblock the drains.
Bicarbonate of soda and vinegar.
I've heard about that. Yeah. I'm not. It's not what. Well, it's not something I've read about or seen about in Ayurveda, but I have heard about bicarbonate of soda and vinegar.
Yes. Just to be clear, folks, I'm not saying drink lots of vinegar and mix it with bicarb. You'd probably explode. But that's good for drains.
Good for what?
Good for drains. Good for unblocking the drains. Not the lymphatic system.
Not your human drains. So one of the things we can do is massage. And you will know about people going for lymphatic drainage massage. And you can do some of this for yourself. And it also gives us that an opportunity for touch, right? Which probably, I think, just about everybody I've spoken to during this lockdown, especially people who do live alone, have so missed some touch from someone. And I've always said that's the thing I miss the most in being a person living alone, is human touch. But we can give self-massage. It's not the same, but it is a very caring, very loving thing to do for yourself. And you can at the same time help move the lymph along. The lymph runs parallel to the circulatory system. But unlike the circulatory system, like the arteries have the pump from the heart, it's pumped out, and the veins have valves, so that as the blood is flowing back to the heart, the valves stop it from slipping back all the time. help blood get back to the heart, be reoxygenated. Now, the lymph doesn't have any of that. So we want to keep it moving. And this massage, got to move my camera a bit, called Abhyanga. Doesn't really matter what we call it, but you do for yourself. And basically, it's up the limbs, right? Up the limbs. It's the same with the leg, up the limb, and round the joints. Right? So around any of the joints, down the chest, round the abdomen, round the hips. And a good time to do this, it's up to you whether you do it before or after a warm bath or a warm shower. Yeah. Some people, and you do it with oil. Yeah. And some people like to get rid of the oil by having the shower afterwards. I'm a Vata, tendency to dry skin, so I like it all to soak in. Yeah. So I tend to do it after a warm bath or after a shower. And so use the oil. If you are Vata, don't use coconut oil. It's a very good oil, and as you know, it's good to eat, but it's drying to the skin. So if you're Vata, don't use coconut oil. You can definitely use it if you're Kapha, you know, because you've already got quite oily skin, and you'll be fine with coconut oil. Let me find, so as I make sure to tell you the things to put in it, that I tell you the right things. Of course, by this time I've mixed all my cards up and don't know which. And I need to put a light on. Can I do that for a minute?
Yes, no problem.
Thank you.
So, whilst we're waiting for Christine, I shall remind you, please share the group. That would be great. Invite people in if you think they will enjoy what's going on here. And if you'd like to buy some coffee, that'll be good too. buymeacoffee.com/thrivehive. Thank you very much. And thanks to our newest subscriber who has sent us a question. So in a moment, I shall ask you the question, Christine.
Okay, that's fine. So oils that you can use that are warming oils are sesame, almond or avocado, any of those. And cooling oils, if you're a pitta and you need a cooling oil, that coconut would be included, olive or sunflower. So even if you're not pitta, but you're feeling all hot and bothered, you know, you could use one of those, olive or sunflower oil. Again, if you're Vata, don't use coconut, it's too drying. If you're feeling anxious and restless, you can add any of the following: basil, geranium, rose, fennel, sweet orange, or marjoram. Right? So restless, anxious, put any of those essential oils into your oil that you're going to do your Abhyanga with. If you're hot and bothered and irritated, and fed up with the world, right, but cross at it all, put some lemon in, or ylang ylang, sandalwood, or lavender. Yeah, so any of those you can put in. So what we're doing is, remember, round at the joints, and then up your arms like this and down round, up and down round. And when you do your ankles, I can show you this bit. Where are we? Are we there? So it's round the ankle, up the leg, round the knee, yeah, up the thighs, yeah. So we're bringing that lymph, we're bringing it up, and we're loving ourselves, you know. We're saying, here you go, body. Here you go, lovely body. It's a nice caressing for you. If you don't have time, Ayurveda says, feet are really important. So when you do your feet, doing this, you know, on the bottom. And if you don't have time for all that, then do your feet and your head. Yeah? Good old, you know, rubbing your head like that. Yeah? And so that's just a way of getting some touch, some caressing, some loving to yourself. And it's all time that you're giving to care for yourself. And if you have children, you can do this gently for them. Yeah. Do this little, and put some, choose a nice oil and do that for them. And you can do it for a partner. Because if you go for an Abhyanga massage in Ayurveda, someone else will do it for you. You even sometimes have two people, one on each side, to do it. But you can do it for yourself.
And now that we have the bubbles that we're allowed to enter, we can go to someone else. If you're a single person, you can go to someone else's house and say, will you go round my joints and up my limbs and round there? And then I'll do the same for you. Everyone's a winner.
You have to know them quite well, but
well, it's a way of getting to know someone better.
I'm sure it is.
Marvellous. So we've just had, thank you for that. We've just had one question. So does Christine recommend any good Ayurvedic cookbooks?
Oh, yes, I do. Is it here on the floor?
Good question, Mandy. Thank you.
Called Eat. Oh, let me see. Wait a minute. I have to get the titles and the authors right. Have I got 2 minutes to go and get?
You go and get them. I'll tell some jokes or something.
Yes, you tell jokes, Paul.
I only know 2 jokes. There were 2 cows. Oh, right, okay.
There's one. I'm coming back with another one in a minute. There's one.
Ayurvedic healing cuisine. Okay, Harish Johari. Okay, yeah, good stuff. Thank you.
Lots of great information at the beginning that will enlarge on all that stuff that I've been telling you about, those little headlines I've given you about Sattva and Rajas, and there's lots of information in this book and lots of information about the different foods as well as the recipes. And then the other one, I'll just go and get.
Okie dokie. So there were 2 cows in the field. One said moo. The other one said, I was going to say that. That's my favourite joke. You either get it or you don't. And I was thinking about the, what do they call, the Gunas. And I looked back over my life and I thought, so when I was a child, I was sattva, just at peace with being myself. And then I got into the Rogas. Is it Rajas, that's it. Did some Rajas stuff, or the active doing, acquiring, stimulation stuff. And then when things went a bit challenging with jobs and relationships and stuff, I went into the Rajas. So yeah, sluggish, depressed, helpless, hopeless. And then, yeah, back into the Rajas again. And I feel now that I am mostly, well, according to the questionnaire I did yesterday and how I feel as well, I'm sattva again with a little bit of Rajas. So that's me, in case you were interested.
Right, yeah, thanks, Paul. Thanks for doing it. And thanks for all the people who've done it and who listen to this, because it's just great to have people interested and people thinking about other ways and, in which we can take care of ourselves and help our physical and mental health, There's the other one. There's the other book that I think's great. It's called
Eat, Taste, Heal.
Yes, Eat, Taste, Heal.
Okay, can we see the author of that one?
Authors, wait a minute, I'm moving the wrong way. There you go.
Right. Lots of people.
Daniel Roder and Chef Johnny Brannigan.
Very good.
Yeah. Chef Johnny works at the Chopra Centre. Again, a lovely book. Recipes to suit the different doshas, and it's really a lovely book.
Super. Thank you very much, Christine. So,
question.
Sorry, say again.
Did somebody have a question, or was that?
That was it. That was it. The question for a recommendation of a cookbook. So you got 2 for the price of 1 there, Mandy. So any final thoughts before we finish, Christine?
Yes, there's something I want to read. I've just got to put it down somewhere. It's only tiny, but I just want to be sure I say it right. So I've just bundled it in with all of these. Just tell another joke, Paul?
Okay. Well, what I'll do instead, I'll just say what's coming up in the Hive this week. So tomorrow, it's Tuesday, so that means it's Man Tuesday. And that's a group of men who meet on Zoom every Tuesday at 6 p.m. and we just talk about whatever we want to talk about. Usually not football or politics or the price of milk, but we talk about feelings, mental health, relationships, masculinity, all sorts of good stuff like that. And we might be having a discussion about George Floyd and all of the anti-racist stuff that's come out of that this week. So that's tomorrow. Wednesday, not sure if yoga's on or not this Wednesday. I'll let you know if I can. And Thursday, we have got Joe Bartholomew talking about EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, which is a special kind of talking therapy, which is dead good for grief and trauma. So tune in for that. Back to you, Christine.
Thank you. So to close, I just thought we'll take some nice deep breaths, because that's just a lovely way to calm. And anyone who's feeling stressed, agitated, irritated, if we breathe deeply, what we do is we influence the vagus nerve that is in charge of our autonomic nervous system, and it will take us from sympathetic system, which is all the get up and go type system, to the parasympathetic, which is the relaxing. So let's just take some of those nice deep breaths. I'm going to count. So I'm going to count 4 for the in breath, 4 to hold it, and 5 for out. Okay, so we're going to do 3 of them. So let's start with breathing in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I have a little poem, a really short poem by someone called Hafiz, and you may have heard of him. He's a Persian poet around the same time as Rumi. And I wanted to say this one. I wish I could show you when you are lonely or in darkness, the astonishing light of your own being. I wish I could show you when you are lonely or in darkness, the astonishing light of your own being.
That's lovely, Christine. I got all tingling when you said the last line there. Very nice indeed. Thank you. So, Mandy says, it's fabulous. I really enjoyed this evening. Thank you, Christine, very much. And I echo those sentiments.
Thank you. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, lovely stuff. So I hope the rest of you enjoyed that, folks, whether you're watching live or watching back on the recording. And Christine, thank you once again for your time and your wealth of knowledge and your lovely energy.
Thank you. Thanks, Paul. Thank you. Take care. Take care, everyone.
Yeah, take care. See you, Christine, and goodbye, everyone. See you soon.
Bye everyone. Bye.